Namaste. Ready for our next talk on the Gita. Again, taking up the subject of action and our responsibility in relation to other people in our action. This is the 29th verse of the third chapter of the Gita. The illumined soul, we don't mean we have perfect illumination, but the yogi certainly has awakened and had some kind of light shining in his consciousness. Otherwise, he wouldn't be a yogi, wouldn't be a philosopher either. So, although we're far from perfect enlightenment, we don't get to use an excuse. See, Hinduism is a very incompassionate religion in a certain way. It doesn't give us the latitude to say, well, God knows I'm only human, because we're not only human. In fact, our humanity is a superficial part of us. And so we don't get to say, well, I'm just I'm an ignorant person. But in your inmost being, you're omniscient. So guess what? Hop to and admit it and start working toward total demonstration of it. That's a wonderful term, demonstration. It was a so-called New Thought movement that first really put the word demonstration had been known for centuries, but the New Thought people put it into action, or put it into circulation, is right. And they keep talking about demonstration. They'll speak of metaphysical principles, healing, but other things too, and say a demonstration. Sometimes they would actually, in advertising a meeting, if there was some kind of thing, whether it was healing or something do more in the psychic realm, it would say a demonstration will be presented. So if we are what we say we are, we have to demonstrate it. Anyone can say, Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman. Soham, I am that. But we've got to live like it. We've got to act like it, speak like it, think like it. So, he says, the illumined soul must not create confusion in the minds of the ignorant by refraining from work. In other words, you must do the right thing, and obviously it's going to be visible. Now, Jesus said, don't blow a trumpet out in the marketplace and say, look, I'm going to give money to the poor. You don't do that. But it ought to be obvious. The pretend yogi, the playtime Hindu that has one or two holy pictures alone in their entire house, and they keep them way back in the bedroom or a meditation room. And nobody is ever notices or doesn't know they're there, so they don't have to be embarrassed. What kind of people are that they would be embarrassed? I gave two very beautiful holy pictures to a couple of hypocrites whom I figured meant what they said. They didn't. So they got them framed and they hung them up. Now, they chose where they hung them up. And it was where visitors could see them. And they actually had the nerve to call me on the telephone about 2 weeks and gripe that they were being embarrassed by those holy pictures. See, Yogananda said, don't be a skunk. That's what a skunk is like. Anyhow, so it is. They will always be with us, so let's just try to learn to ignore them. All right. The illumined soul must not create confusion in the minds of the ignorant by refraining from work. But also letting people know you do this. You should publicize it. And you should say, oh, guess what? I'm a yogi. There are people who do that too. Well, they're not yogis. But there ought to be some evidence in your life and in the way you act that you must not quite be like the crowd. And if you upset somebody, well, that's their own inner evil, not yours. The ignorant in their delusion identify the Atman with the gunas. In other words, that first they identify with the body and therefore with the actions of the body. So if they do charitable work, they say, I'm a charitable person. If they act in a mean way, they say, well, I'm a mean person. And they ignore the fact they have an inner being altogether. Now, I had an excuse when I was a little child. This I only know by being told by my grandmother. But when I was just barely able to speak, if I got sick, I would slap myself on my arm and say, bad boy. Well, I was right. It was bad karma that did it. I mean, I don't know what kind of subliminal thing and whether I had any rational thought process about it, but I was sick because of bad boy. We have to take responsibility for all that comes to us. And that also means when good comes, well, we were good. We were good boy and good girls. All right. So they become tied to the senses and the actions of the senses. Okay, fine. Well, that's their problem. Now let's go on to someone who's wise, to Arjuna, who's listening to Krishna. So Krishna says, shake off this fever of ignorance. What does fever do? It often produces hallucinations. A lot of people are living in complete hallucinations as to who they are, and as where they are, and as what they do. It's really kind of a fever dream their particular world is. Stop hoping for worldly rewards. In other words, I just want to be at peace. I had a yoga student, sort of obliquely because it was because her husband was interested, that said to me more than once, I just want da 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 da. Is that too much to ask? And I would say, no, Ruth, it is not too much to ask. It's too little to ask. You're something greater than that, something more than that. She was a remarkable genius. She was an incredible person. Why did she want to live like a nonentity? Well, it's easier, I guess, but that then makes your life miserable. All right. So fix your mind on the Atman. Well, that's easier said than done. Fix your mind on your divine self. If you're not a yogi, you can't do it. There is no hope. Sitting around saying, I am one with the Holy Lord. I am spirit. I am truth. I am life. You know what? You're babbling like an idiot. Your consciousness has got to be genuinely awakened and centered in divinity. Any fool can talk about divinity. But to be divinity, that's a whole other thing. And that's what Krishna is trying to get across to Arjuna. Dedicate all your actions to me. Now, don't think, oh, I'm going to do something nice. Excuse me, I'm marking my text. I'm going to do something nice for the Lord. I'm going to serve the Lord in the world. Oh. So that's not what he's talking about. He's saying dedicate all your actions to me means orient all your actions toward the realization of your own divinity. And that's me. Krishna embodied that reality. So what Krishna says, our own self, or if you want to say higher self, is talking to us. That's how I felt when I read the Gita. I did not think I was reading a dialogue between two people that took place way back thousands of years ago. I felt like my soul was talking to me. I truly did. When I read these words, I knew historically there was someone named Krishna and he spoke the words, but I felt they were directed to me. And I also had the conviction that I was not learning anything new, though I'd never heard it before. I was remembering it through the agency of my own self. So if I hadn't liked what it said, it would have been a problem, but I loved what I read. All right, dedicate all your actions to me, then go forward and fight. There he means on the battle. But for you and I, it means go forth and fight that which is ignorant in you, that which is of lower nature in you, that which wants to hide your true divinity from you. Fight it, wrestle with it, change your life, change your mode of life. In fact, a wise person sits down and thinks about their entire life and says, what do I need to change to come into harmony with the truth of my being, and which will not hinder but will further my realization of that being? Because right now we say, yes, I have a divine self, but we're not experiencing it. We can't prove it, that's for sure, not even to ourselves, intellectually speaking. But we fix that in mind. And therefore, you have to rework your life. The idea, oh, yes, I read some books by that Swami, that's something, um, and I thought it was pretty good. Uh, doesn't work. Even meditation doesn't work. You sneak off so nobody knows that you meditate for 10 minutes. Your whole life has to be changed, and everybody around you's got that. Doesn't mean you missionary them or you brag to them, but your changes should be very overt. If you're a meat eater, you stop. And I don't mean you taper off and you listen to some jackass that says, oh, your body is used to meat, so you shouldn't just stop. That's like saying, oh, your body is used to arsenic, so you can't quit letting somebody administer doses to you. But if you want to live like the dead, well, go right ahead. But everything has to be changed. That's why I knew I got to get out of town. I was living in a brain dead place. Everybody I knew, spiritually speaking, was mostly could be considered brain dead. Now, I had good fortune to go to a very positive little fundamentalist church. They were just as ignorant as they could be. It wasn't their fault. Their fake religion told them wrong things, but they had good hearts and they were very dear. And some of them were holy people. Because if you live up to what you know, God gives you more. So there are people there I revered. But I had been given the big picture by reading the Bhagavad Gita. Well, I got the big picture before that. I had a certain awakening experience, and then I read the Gita, and it confirmed what I said and helped to expand what I had done, what I learned. And I thought, I never read Yogananda's very wise statement, company is greater than willpower, which means no matter what your will may be, if you associate with degraded people, you'll become degraded. Ignorant people, you'll lapse back into being ignorant. And fortunately, because some wonderful soul had from the early part of 1952 been having self-realization magazines sent to the local library, and I took home stacks of them and read them all. And I learned, hey, there's a place where yogis live. there's a place where yogis get together and meet, I'm going there. And so I, of course, thought of an excuse for my parents. By the way, I was paying for all this myself. I had my own money. So I wasn't making my family foot the bill. And so off I went within about 2 months. Off I went to California. I went to Los Angeles, went to UCLA as a cover for it appearing to be a good thing for me to do. And I, I'd like to tell you about it because company is greater than willpower. All right. I had decided, well, I'm just going to kind of laze around while I'm out here. And California is a place, if you like the idea of nut religions, and I was always interested in them from childhood, what people call cults and are very chilled about, I thought they were a scream. And I would read uh, books about the new false religions of America and think, this is really creative, you know? I didn't believe it, but I thought it was good. So I thought, here I am in Los Angeles, home of the loonies. So I may even wait for a whole year before I really become a yogi. I think I'll look in the phone book and I'll read things and I'll go to every a different loony religion place every week. Boy, what a fool! But I plan to do it. However, I was staying with two people who they weren't barflies utterly, but they were booze drinkers. I don't know why they never had it at home, but they'd go out and sit in the bar and kill their brain cells. And so they were going into Hollywood to bar hop. And I knew that the Self Realization Fellowship Center was on Sunset Boulevard, right there in Hollywood. So I said, and I had looked somewhere and found out that they had something happening on Sunday evenings. And this was a Sunday. And I said, look, you take me by that place, you let me off, and you come back in an hour, hour and a half. And then, yes, I'll go sit around with you in any fool place you decide you still want to go to. But that goes first. So they took me there. And actually, I don't think there were hardly seven people there because it was a meditation only. There was no talk, no nothing, just meditation. Led by a real saint of God, uh, Swami Bimalananda, was whom they call Brother Bimalananda, but one of Yogananda's greatest treasures that he made for the benefit of the world. So I sat there and, they sang some of their songs. I didn't know any of them. I sat in the very back row, of course. And when it was over, people left. I noticed as they went out that Bimalanandaji was standing outside, kind of at the end of the walk, and they would shake hands with him and pranam. And so I thought, well, I know how to do that. So I went last in line and came, pranam, I shook hands and pranam. And Bimalanandaji looked at me. I'm not talking poetry. I looked into those eyes, and through them as windows, I saw like an ocean, a vast ocean of joyful consciousness. I mean, it was, shall we say, a surprise because I know a lot of good people. And I mentioned, I think, I had two grandmothers that could work miracles. They didn't have eyes like that. I looked into, I saw this vast, vast consciousness. So he said something a little to me, and I to him. I don't know. He may have said some come back that sounds like I like who said it, but anyway, on I went. I stood and waited. My friend picked me up. I said, "All right, I'm moving out of Westwood. I'm coming near here. I'm going to live here because I just looked into the eyes of a saint and I want what he's got." And so that happened. On the 4th of July, Independence Day, the day of freedom, I moved right next door. God had it all arranged. I went into the cafe and said something, and one of the people who waited, the monastics administered the cafe. So the waiters, waitresses, they were all monastics, and so were those out in the kitchen. And one of them said, "Well, there's an apartment for rent right next door across the alley from this property." So I went over there, and sure, there it was. And believe me, I put down a deposit, and on the 4th of July, I moved there. And then I got to live in freedom, moving toward greater freedom. So that is it. Go forward. I'll mark the thing here and fight. So I went forth to fight. Then later I went to India to go forth. That's a whole story in itself that no one could possibly convey. Though there are people that go to India that can't stand it. There are people that go to India, "Oh, well, one bad, I don't care." And then there are those who go there and say, "I'm home." And it's good to not just have a spiritual home, but know where it is and to be there. So anyhow, in God, of course, is the ultimate home. So namaste. Thank you very much.